Again, for some, they might say that, what is he talking about? But for some, I would say that it actually is preferable because it takes the onus off you. And remember, it's 1 whole hour. Generally, ek ghante ka matlab ye hai ki everybody knows you get usually 2 questions, right? Maximum 3 questions. And even if there's a third question, that third question is already for 6 or 8 marks maximum, right? The rest of the 2 questions take up the maximum number of marks. So इसका मतलब ये है कि roughly speaking आधा घंटा मिल जाएगा दोनों questions के लिए. आधा घंटा काफी होता है, right? आधे घंटे में से मैं ये भी कहता हूँ अगर 10 मिनट सिर्फ आपने क्वेश्चन को पढ़ने में लगा दिए हैं, as long as आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग होगी क्वेश्चन की, तो that is totally fine as well. All right, provided that you understand the question. So my point is, this is the scenario. Okay. Yes, Mia Khalifa, P4 में time का issue नहीं होता. That is absolutely correct. All I'm saying is the initial jitters that a person feels when the first time एक P4 आता है सामने, या P6 अगर IGCSE की बात करें, by the way, P4, P6 ये दोनों एक ही चीज हैं, by the way. ठीक है, whether it's IGCSE or O levels. So इसकी बात की जा रही है. So yeah, but especially for P6, by the way, उनका पहला question अक्सर there's a whole discussion, and we'll come to that discussion in a bit कि क्या क्या है वो. So don't shy away from that. उसमें मैं जरूर कहूँगा कि the thing that you got to do is read the instructions and please underline your keywords. And when I say keywords, I mean both the command terms and the keywords that might help you recall what part of the syllabus they're asking the question from. Is it plant nutrition? Is it plant transport? Is it animal transport? Is it germination? Therefore, is it the process of reproduction that they're referring to? What is it that they're doing? Because that actually goes a long way in trying to understand, what part is it? So don't panic. That's the scenario. Don't panic if you see long questions. So remember to just underline the keywords and try to go best as you can. And try to ensure that, for example, if they're asking a question where they're telling you that there are 2 beakers, this concentration. So don't just go for the words. Make a diagram. For example, they say 2 beakers. So एक pencil पकड़े, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा अपना पेपर गंदा करें, पेंसिल पकड़े और छोटे से 2 बीकर बना दें साइड को, और क्या भरा हुआ है इसके अंदर वो भी बना दें उसके अंदर. जी 1 cm क्यूब इसके अंदर फॉर एग्जांपल आपने प्रोटीन डाली हुई है, 1 cm क्यूब इसके अंदर लेट्स से आपने स्टार्च डाली हुई है, दोनों के अंदर फॉर एग्जांपल आपने 2 cm क्यूब आयोडीन डाली हुई है. So again, do this. Whatever I'm doing on the screen in front of you guys, try to do it on your own. Try to be a silent teacher to yourself while reading the question and doing it as much as can. Okay? I'll go to the formula as well. Okay. So that's basically the scenario. So 2 beakers in that scenario. So yeah, so that's the visual. And then make sure that when you're making, for example, your diagram, then make sure that if this is your page, and let's say the question begins like so and so, and this is where it ends, and this is, let's say, the number of marks, then your diagram is not supposed to be as small as this. Your diagram is you're supposed to ensure that you actually use up the whole page as much as possible, maximal possible, provided that the size is much bigger, and much bigger means somewhere between 1.5 to 2 times bigger at least. Remember, at the size of being bigger. And second is to ensure that the proportions are absolutely correct. For example, if this cell had a nucleus over here, then you can't make a big nucleus like this. You can't, because it's too big. Instead, you'll have to ensure that your nucleus, if it is there, is supposed to end up being over here like so. So maybe as big as this. So again, shading, don't try to shade. I'm just trying to show this so it can be then. A font 3 times bigger, yeah, I mean, that's up to you. I mean, the bigger it is, the better it is. Just do not compromise on 2 things. One, on the proportion. And the second thing, which again is the third thing, is going to be here. Do not draw over the printed portion. So don't ensure drawing over printed portion or even writing over the printed portion is not recommended at all. Do not draw over the printed or the right portion as well. And don't use any ruler to make any lines except when you are labeling. So your label needs to be consistent. For example, you're labeling the nucleus, so make a line with your ruler and write the word nucleus as it is. Make a line cytoplasm on the side, neatly write the word cytoplasm it is, and make sure that the line is actually pointing to the structure. So for example, you can't do this if you are writing cell membrane. What's the problem here? If you notice, the problem here is that I did not ensure that the line went all the way onto the cell membrane, for example, right? So these are some things which are important that you have to ensure. Yeah, so that's to ensure. While you're using drawing the diagram, ensure that you remember that best case scenario is to use an HB pencil. अब इसमें कुछ कभी-कभार बच्चे हंस रहे होते हैं कि HP is not कि company को हम वो करें. HP is not a company. HP simply means that it is basically H stands for hard and B stands for black. So there's B, there's HP, and then there's 2B. Usually that's what's available in the market. I would say HP इस्तेमाल करें. HP बहुत black hard नहीं होती, medium hard होती है. And that generally is the acceptable one. I do not recommend 2B personally speaking, but then again, it's not a one size fits all scenario. Because जब आप 2B इस्तेमाल करोगे, वो soft ज़्यादा होगी. Soft इस्तेमाल होती है sketching के लिए. और sketching आपने करनी नहीं है अपने एग्जाम में. Sketching आपने करनी नहीं है. आपने complete continuous lines banani hai, right? And you don't ensure that you do not take the nib of the pencil off your page until and unless you're done, you know? And so that's the important thing. No sketchy lines, no sketching, no shading, no overlapping of anything. So for example, if you have to ensure that you're drawing two cells, then let's say this is a plant cell that you're making, and you have to draw another plant cell. So this is the first plant cell I'm making. And remember that whenever you're drawing a plant cell, even if you do not see the double layer cell wall, make sure that your cell wall is a double layer, because cell wall is thicker compared to the cell membrane. And if you have to draw another cell next to it, you have to ensure that you draw the outer layer first, and then you draw the inner layer after that. This is the way to go about it. And remember, at the end, what do you have? You have 1, 2, and 3 lines which are joined together to ensure that you know that there are 2 cells together. Often kids do this. कि वो पहले अंदर वाली line, बाहर वाली line बना देते हैं, अंदर वाली बना देते हैं, फिर एक और line बनाते हैं. And sometimes they overlap one another, or they just make another line considering that, you know, this will actually do the job, but this is not the way to go about it. Please ensure that you draw the outer layers first, especially if it's the cell wall that you're making. So this is important as well. Coming very quickly over, so I'm just going to address a few questions before I go to the graph bits. If you just allow me, I'm just going to look. Yeah, so I'm just going to go up here. Sir, P format time को इशू तो नहीं होता. सब लोग कौन से याद करने हैं? Daniel sir, formulas कौन से याद करने हैं? Look, formula ज़्यादा यही चलेगा. ठीक है. I is over A is equal to M, and remember कि magnification कभी कभार दी होती है. So let's say magnification दी हुई है पहले की, और आपको actual यानी size चाहिए, तो जाहिर है this will be translated as A is equal to I over M. और M को ढूंढने के लिए क्या चाहिए आपको? जो भी आपकी डायग्राम होगी उसके नीचे X करके 1400 या whatever will be the magnification. Always look for this. I'm saying the photograph, that is the photo micrograph. So make sure that you look at this. तो फिर ज़ाहिर 1400 for example आपका magnification है, वो DVM. Image size क्या है? Image size is the size that you're looking at of this particular photograph. So for example, if it's a red blood cell, उसकी image size क्या होगा? That's going to be the case. So you divide that to get the actual size, right? And sometimes you don't have the magnification, you have to find the magnification as well. Now the thing is that, yeah, so that's this. And uske alawa, sometimes you're asked to, you know, calculate the change, you know, or the percentage change. The percentage change. Now, it could be anything. Percentage change in length, for example, of potatoes during or after osmosis, for example, right? So, uske liye kya hota hai ki you go first for the final length, whatever the final length was, and you minus it with the initial length and divide it by the initial length, so that you know how much there is. Some people just end up doing the final length over here instead. So ये initial length है, multiply that by 100, you get a percentage change. अगर वैसे ही पूछ रहे हैं तो just do that. Make sure that all 3 lengths are supposed to be in the same unit. If it's millimeter, it's supposed to be all millimeters, so on and so forth. All right. And that's generally the ones that usually get asked. All right. Line of best fit, yeah, again, can be done. So for example, if you have a graph and they, let's say, are talking about, you know, let's say they're talking about the number of oxygen bubbles. And yeah, sorry, in fact, we will go with the light intensity. This is photosynthesis, and we're going with the number of oxygen bubbles, which we know come out more. So obviously, as light intensity increases, you know that the number of oxygen bubbles will tend to go in the increase, right? So let's say you have generally a line that meets this particular criteria. Now you could go for a line of best fit. ठीक है? थोड़ा सा complicated कर दिया. Let's say ये scenario आ गया. ठीक है? Or you could, and this is what I recommend my students personally speaking, you could go for, and you should rather go for, when in doubt, go for joining the points with ruled straight lines. Go for joining points with ruled straight lines. What does that mean? I'm not saying draw one straight line of best fit, but obviously you can do if you want. But for example, let's say it starts with a 0, and don't interpolate or extrapolate on your own either, by the way. So one line from point A to point B goes like this. Again, I'm not using a ruler. Then ruler leke aap second se third line pe bana de. Phir third se fourth line pe bana de. And phir fourth se fifth line pe bana de. All right. So I'm sorry, I'm not using a ruler here because obviously I don't have it. Now notice I deliberately left out what? I deliberately left out this guy over here. Okay? Because why? This most likely seems to be what kind of value? An anomalous value. An anomalous value, as you know or should know, is a value that does not fit the trend. So for example, let's say the values were, I don't know, let's say 5, then comes 10, and let's say then comes 29, and then comes 17, then comes 21, then comes, let's say, 26. So in terms of the trend of going upwards, 5 to 10 makes sense. But look at the 29, the big jump, because uske baad 17 hai. So 17, 21, 26 makes sense. This happens to be an anomalous value, right? So automatically, even by looking at the table values, you'll be able to see. Or if it's, for example, if you get a graph where you're supposed to write the mean value, graph me table, or let's say aapko IME is 6, 4, 6, 19, 6, right? So the best thing to do is obviously count 6, 4, 6, and 6, but disregard this value totally as well, which means that you'll only count the number of values, so 6 plus 4 plus 6 plus 6. And how many numbers are there? It's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and divide that by 4. Okay? So that's basically what you do. And obviously when you do that, that's when you divide by 4. And by the way, your answer has to be up to, acceptable significant figures. Acceptable significant figures. Or you can say up to maximum 2 decimal places if you really are interested. Otherwise, even 1 decimal place will do as well. Okay? And in fact, this is so important that you ensure that you don't write a long answer. So don't go for an answer that reads something like this. This is wrong. Okay?